I'm Whitney.
I'm Mindy.
And I'm Deb.
We're three best friends who love nerdy things.
Well, some people think we're nerdy, but we think we're pretty awesome.
This is Our Nerdiest Thing.
Hello, fellow nerds, and welcome to Our Nerdiest Thing. Today, we are discussing Tessa Bailey's Wreck the Halls. This is part 1 of our discussions. We are talking about chapters 1 through 16. Before we get into it, Deb, will you please share our nerdiest cocktail?
Absolutely. This week's cocktail is called the Beat Crush, which is our take on an orange crush. It's themed after having a not-so-secret crush on your co-star, and this drink pairs well with filming a reality show, hallway orgasms, and edging. And it may cause intense feelings for someone you hardly know. So you're going to need some orange juice, tropical flavored vodka, triple sec, Sprite, and all the deliciousness. And Whitney's had 2 sips and she's over the edge, people.
I'm very giggly. It is very good. Next up, Mindy. Have you spun the wheel of names for the nerdy and dirty recap?
Yes, the wheel of names says it's your turn, Whitney.
Ooh.
Sucker.
I forgot to bring my phone down here.
How many times are you going to say edging in this?
I actually am not sure.
Recap?
I don't know that I wrote it down at all in my
That's
notes.
okay. I'll make up for it.
Okay, hold on. I'm setting a timer. Mindy is very excited about her vocab this week.
I might need a couple more sips of this cocktail before we get to the vocab.
All right. We are ready to go.
Okay, 1. Melody and Beat's moms were in a super famous rock band that infamously imploded and broke up. 2. They met once as 16-year-olds and both have been crushing on each other from afar ever since. Number 3. Now they're both 30 and reconnecting because Beat wants to do a reality show reuniting their band. Beat needs the show for money because he's being blackmailed by somebody. Number 5. Melody is insanely private but agrees to do the show because it's Beat. Number 6. Mount Beat is what I wrote down. Mount Beat are great together on camera, and the internet loves them. Beat's mom agrees to reunite when Melody lies and says that her mom wants to. Number 8, Beat makes out with Melody and lets her grind up on him and orgasms. Number 9, the man blackmailing Beat is his dad and the drummer from the band. And number 10, Beat tells Melody he gets off on being edged, but likes to climax alone. She's into it.
You had 4 seconds left.
Wow.
You did your first 3. Your first 3 took 40 seconds.
I saw you hurry up.
Wrap it up, yo. Wrap it up.
I just like to point out, it was supposed to be
M
M plus Beat for Melody and Beat.
Beats.
Mount Beat. Is what it looks like. So I did say edged once.
So, friends, if you ever want to do a podcast, consider not drinking.
I will say I had to cut off the end of that sentence.
What was the sentence?
Beat tells Melody he gets off on being edged, but always leaves to climax alone. She's into it and wants to ride that dick to Edgetown.
You had time to say that, too.
That's staying in the episode. Sorry to break it to you.
Well, and I will say, too, I listened to the audiobook while we were driving back home from Charleston together, and I said to you guys, I think I've been reading too many dark romance, because when he was, so afraid to tell her that he likes being edged, I was like, that's not a big deal.
So that's actually one of my questions that I needed to... I said, how bad is it that Beat thinks he's a sexual deviant because he likes edging? And the 3 of us are like, yeah, so that's it.
That's child's play.
All right, buddy. Yeah, I wrote, Beat, you're so cute.
I mean, he really is so cute.
Oh, you like to wait a second to get off, you deviant.
Well, Mindy, I think you're going to tell us a lot about edging with our nerdiest vocabulary.
That I haven't read a whole lot of books that have really delved into edging, so I knew what it was, but I didn't realize I might be a little into edging.
Oh, Mindy.
Yeah. It was a huge turn on. So I wanted to kind of dive into that for our nerdiest vocabulary. So I'm going to talk a little bit about edging.
I can't wait to feel uncomfortable.
So edging is actually an orgasm control technique where a person, through stimulation with a partner or through masturbation, builds right up to the point where they're about to orgasm, the metaphorical edge just before the climax, then stops stimulation, waits, and then starts the build up all over again. So while
that sounds horrible.
It's torture.
Well, but here's the thing. So Beat uses, this is why I think he thinks he's deviant, because he uses it to, he uses edging to punish himself, basically, like to the point of edging is it's actually to make sex last longer and in many cases make the orgasm feel more intense. So that's what it's typically used for, but Beat's actually like using it to punish himself.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that is a little deviant. So edging through masturbation, particularly in women, provides an opportunity to get really in tune to your body also and to focus on what really sets it off when it comes to your pleasure. Okay, so there's this website, and it's the best website name ever. It's called OMG Yes. And it's a website that is focused on bringing attention to the female orgasm. Yes, that is out there, people. And it has reported that 66% of women who edge have longer, more intense orgasms.
Oh,
It can
congratulations, ladies.
Yeah. It can also increase stamina. And this is kind of interesting to me to put actual numbers to this. On average, men last about 5.4 minutes before climax during penetrative sex. Women, on the other hand, take on average of 13 minutes and 25 seconds to have a real orgasm. Like, we knew it took longer, right? But like, that's a lot. That's almost 3 times longer.
That's a big difference.
I was going to say, how many guys can last 13 minutes?
None. Only book boyfriends. So, so using the start-stop method of edging can actually close that gap a little bit more. So if you're trying to want to climax together or closer together, then you use this edging technique.
Well, all right.
Whitney's looking at me and I'm not sure what to say.
Well, I'm trying to think of how to segue smoothly. And there's
Neat.
No, for real though, I definitely think I might have unlocked a kink there because it was a huge turn on to read about it. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it was a turn on to read about it. And they do that in the Guild books too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oh, that's
the
right.
king is really into edging for RN.
Mm-hmm.
But see, he uses that as a punishment too, though.
No, he edges her.
I know. So he's punishing her.
I'm not talking about Midas. I'm talking about the other king.
Okay, gotcha.
The true king in the bedroom. Well, Slade. Slade.
Yeah.
Hashtag not my king.
Hashtag not my king, Midas.
Well, thank you, Mindy, for starting us off in such a informative way.
I mean,
Oh, that's great.
I always like to throw a little twist in there.
Yeah. What does edging say in Urban Dictionary?
I didn't look that up. I should have.
I bet it's just a treasure trove.
I'm sure it is.
Of all kinds of wonderful things. Well, let's get into it and talk about our favorite moment from this first part of the book. Shall I go first?
Please.
My favorite book was descriptions of Beat getting the tingles.
Oh, what
From
kind
his-
of tingles?
Well, just his point of view of how Melody makes him feel and not just reading Melody's point of view and how he makes her feel. I really enjoyed reading the guy's perspective and even just the other person, not necessarily the guy, but just the other person, right? Where you get to see how both of them are feeling about each other and the way that each affects the other one and not just getting a one-sided well, is he into me or is he not into me? I don't know. No, we know they're both super into each other. I especially really liked it at the gym when he's like, come get a cup of coffee at my gym.
And there's sweat rolling down the V of his abs.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Yes.
I was I almost put that as my favorite spicy scene.
I mean, it was great for both of them, right? We got to see how each of them were affected by the other. Yeah. And I just really liked that as a writing mechanism, I guess, and as character development. And I just really appreciated that. So thank you, Tessa Bailey.
Yeah. Shout out to
She is a
Tessa.
fantastic writer.
What about you, Mandy?
So my favorite moment was when they're entering the gala and the paparazzi and all the people are all gathering and they're yelling things out and Melody gets that snowflake in her eye. This is the first time that she's really seeing that people are reacting to her, to them on the reality show. And I felt like this part's sort of the moment that Melody endears herself to the public, right? And then also simultaneously realizing that she herself is endearing.
Yeah.
And when she says, I have a 2-part question. 1, does artificial snow melt? And 2, would I look dashing in an eye patch? I feel like that's the moment her confidence starts to build.
Yeah,
Right.
I would agree with that.
And I love seeing that journey and where it started.
She's very
I love that
witty.
journey for her.
I love that journey for her. I love that for her.
She is really funny. Her one-liners are really funny to me.
She really is. But I think, Beat kind of brings that out in her too, because she isn't confident enough to kind of do that beforehand, even with her friends.
Right.
Yeah,
really.
there's a comfort level with him.
Yes.
Right.
That makes her feel confident to do that. I like that.
Well, I think mine would be when they first started recording for the reality show. The producers are trying to confirm that the Steel Birds band broke up due to a love triangle, as we know. So Melody and Beat they start listing all of the rumored celebrities that could have broken them up. So they start with Axl Rose from Guns N' Roses, which... Sure, I'm positive that guy's broken up tons of relationships in his life. So, true story. Did you know that Axl Rose ruined the relationship of real-life bandmate and his then-girlfriend because Axl actually had sex with her in the studio and recorded it? Did you know this?
He recorded it?
And it gets worse. If you go and give the song Rocket Queen a listen, you can hear it in the background.
Ew.
Like, really? Really? Yeah. Okay, but on a less gross note, Melody continues to list the rumored celebrities, including Keanu Reeves, which makes Melody claim that she would love to be connected with John Wick in some way, even if it meant he had railed her mom. But the celebrity that Melody claims is a secret freak is actually Mr. Belding from Saved by the Bell, and I kind of believe it.
Well,
I can see it.
You know what's funny is that I was listening to a podcast, Pod Meets World, the Boy Meets World podcast, and they had Mark Paul Gosselaar, who was, of course, Zach Morris, and he was talking about how he went to a strip club and Mr. Belding was there, and he was like a regular at this. It was in Vegas or something. Maybe it was in LA. I don't know. But he was talking about how Mr. Belding, the actor, he was like, we were kids and he was an adult, so like he went off and did adult things. And I was like, Mr. Belding.
I love that none of us know his real name, and he's just going to be Mr. Belding.
Actually, I will. It is. So if you look him up on Instagram, because I already linked him in the show notes, it's on Instagram. It's the real Mr. Belding.
Oh, that's funny.
But we do have a special guest tonight. It's actually Brian from Rock and Roll Bedtime Stories. He asked if he could come on and tell us about the most ridiculous band breakups of all time.
I can't wait to hear this.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Okay, so
That was very energetic. Thanks for being here.
glad I can bring that out on you, Whitney. Awesome. So we're talking about band breakups. This is like one of my favorite subjects. So we talk about this sort of stuff all the time on our show. Band breakups are funny things, right? Because they get portrayed in pop culture as these big explosions. My all-time favorite movie is That Thing You Do, and there's an amazing scene where the band essentially breaks up at the end of the movie. Have you seen this?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
love that movie.
Okay, so at the end, he says the manager tells him to play something snappy, and the lead singer, being very petulant, says, "I quit," and he snaps it. Right. So you always think of like that sort of drama being involved in band breakups. Now that said, I think that usually breakups are like these long festering wounds, right? Their relationships falling apart is what's really happening. And so there's these long festering wounds that culminate with this amputation. And sometimes that amputation is spurred on by this crazy, bizarre situation. Do you like the medical analogy?
That's sad.
Okay, so
You're bumming me out, man.
Don't amputate my band.
yeah, that's what happens. So a lot of times somebody
You're
literally
right,
gets
though.
cut
Yeah.
out of the band, right? So
That's true.
So one that does have a slightly explosive culmination, a band breakup that I wanted to tell you about, is it predates rock and roll. And this is we're gonna go before rock bands to big bands. You've probably heard the name the Dorsey Brothers, maybe. Have you ever heard these guys?
I'm sorry, my mind went to like ancient Greece and stuff.
Oh no.
Mine did too. I was like, was this like pre-recorded music? I was like, well, and then Socrates got pissed and threw his harp on the floor.
I was wondering, like, how far back? When was rock and roll?
This is great. You're putting it in great perspective.
Our nerdiest thing, Brian.
This drops it only to like the 30s, not like the 1630s. We did do an episode recently about the Zildjian family, who also had a big breakup
like
in the family.
Zildjian as in like
Zildjian
the
symbols. And they started in the 1600s, and Zildjian and Sabian are the two main symbol brands now, and they're two brothers who got mad at each other and went and started the other symbols. So
You lost Whitney.
When you said symbol, I was thinking like SYMBOL symbol.
So many things to explain.
I knew what you were talking about, Brian.
Brian, welcome to the podcast.
Okay, yeah, this is great.
Explain it to me like I'm 3.
Listen, this is exactly how our show goes, all right? Let me tell you, we got a great review of our show once. It was like, this is a 4-star review and not a 5-star review because these guys get incredibly off topic. So I feel right at home. Okay, so the Dorsey brothers, Tommy and Jimmy, they start playing in regional dance bands when they're like 15 or 16. And in their early 20s, which is also their early 1920s, they officially formed this dance band, and they call themselves the Dorsey brothers. Now, key thing that you've probably learned from rock and roll is that, the Kinks, Oasis, the Black Crowes, being in a band with your brother, not a great idea. I have a brother.
Work out.
And I understand how these things happen. There's just these tensions that boil under the surface for a long time. Eventually, it's all going to erupt. So with Tommy and Jimmy, years of tensions erupt one night in May of 1935 during a performance at the Glen Island Casino in New York. They're playing this tune. I'm sure it's one of your favorites. It's called I'll Never Say Never Again Again. They can't agree on the tempo. So Tommy thinks Jimmy's playing it too fast. Now, this is like such a classic brothers thing. You're playing it too fast. Oh, I'm like reminded of Step Brothers. And it can't get him to slow down. And so he famously says something to him like, "Don't you think that's a little fast there, buddy?" And then he just walks off the stage and the band is over. That's it.
That's the last time they ever performed?
That's the last time they played for decades. The Dorsey Brothers Orchestra now immediately becomes the Jimmy Dorsey Orchestra. Tommy goes and starts something new. He starts the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra, and this is the fun little, it's our nerdiest things. Here's a fun little nerd fact. He starts focusing on finding young vocalists to highlight in his music. This becomes what he does with the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra. One of these vocalists he finds is this young kid who starts singing with his orchestra, and his name is Frank Sinatra. Oh. So that is how Frank Sinatra gets started, is because of this breakup of the Dorsey brothers.
Nice.
So overall, band breakups happen for like one of 4 reasons, right? Sex, drugs, ego, money. Those are pretty much the reasons.
Rock and roll.
That is it. It's literally part of the tagline of our show. Sometimes it's a combination of all those things. So in your book, right, the sex is a big part of it. With Tommy and Jimmy, it's definitely ego. Another ego-related breakup that I like, because it seems very unexpected, is Simon and Garfunkel. So two nice boys, acoustic guitar, soft-spoken sadness, right?
Soft-spoken sadness.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like they would be.
Yeah, they seem so chill. Like,
no, they're not. Also, the Everly brothers, they're not on my list, but they did not like each other. Anyway, so Simon and Garfunkel, they meet in elementary school. So they're basically brothers, right? Like they've known each other their whole lives.
I didn't know that.
And they start to really get under each other's skin. They're an interesting story all the way around because they sort of weren't supposed to get famous. Like what happens with them is in 1963, they're these old schoolmates. They put out one record and it fails miserably, and they go their separate ways. So Art Garfunkel goes back to college. Paul Simon goes to Europe to be an artist on his own. And then a year after that record comes out, some radio stations, one in Boston and one in Florida, start playing Sound of Silence a year later because it was on that first record. And the song's producer hears it. And he decides, because he has some rights to it, I guess, to go back and actually overdub a guitar and drums into it, re-releases it to radio. Simon and Garfunkel don't even know this has happened. Because Paul Simon's not even in the country. And they become an act. People want to hear Simon and Garfunkel. So they come back together and are like almost forced to put out a second record because they accidentally got famous.
They still don't like each other?
Well, they're friends. They're old friends. Okay. You know, they're old friends and they have issues. And they eventually, what's really funny about it is this guy, Mike Nichols, makes a movie called The Graduate. And he goes back and grabs all these old Simon and Garfunkel songs and he makes this record. And it just makes them astronomically famous. There is a year at the end of the 60s where for 16 weeks, the charts, the number 1 album and the number 2 album, one of them is the Simon and Garfunkel album, and the other one is The Graduate soundtrack. So they basically have the top 2 for 16 weeks. That's how big they get. They become one of the biggest acts in the world for a period of time. We sort of forget this. So during this time, you may or may not remember this, a few years later, Mike Nichols decides to adapt the Joseph Heller novel that you might have read at some point in high school or college, Catch-22. It's a big, complicated thing. He tries to make a film out of it. It's a famous film story, too, because it doesn't go super well. But he creates a role in it for Paul Simon and for Art Garfunkel. And then there's a certain period where, like during this time, the Simon and Garfunkel are having their own arguments all the time. And they get news that the guy who's been writing the script has decided it's too long, and he's cut a bunch of scenes. And they are all the scenes that Paul Simon is in. So they get this call, and it's like, Paul, you're not in the movie.
But not...
Art, we need you to come to Mexico to shoot the movie. So they also have a new album that they're supposed to be putting out, and this is the album that will become Bridge Over Troubled Water. And so this is often pointed to as the thing that officially breaks them up, because Art takes the movie and Paul gets left behind with his jealousy and rage. But the best part of the story, and that makes me laugh, is that Paul is pissed that Art has gone to Mexico and abandoned him. And he does what all pissed off songwriters do. He writes a song.
He wrote a song about it.
He writes my favorite Simon & Garfunkel song, The Only Living Boy in New York, which for years, I never paid attention to the lyrics. You ever listen to the lyrics of that song? This is literally the lyrics of the song. Get your plane right on time. I know your part will go fine. Fly down to Mexico. Here I am, the only living boy in New York. It's literally about how mad he is at Art Garfunkel.
There's
and if you've
no
heard it,
subtlety at all.
it's a beautiful song. It's a beautiful song. I love that song. So the Dorsey brothers break up over a song. Simon and Garfunkel break up over Paul not getting his movie role. And the irony is that the record they end up creating, like I said, Bridge Over Troubled Water, it's their biggest record.
Yeah.
So
and Paul Simon goes on to have like a pretty decent
huge career.
solo career.
Yeah.
And it's funny because Art Garfunkel tries to be a film star and doesn't do a great job of it. He wins a Golden Globe at some point. Like, he actually does okay, but none of us remember Art Garfunkel as an actor.
No.
But Paul Simon ends up winning. You know, if you're going to win, Paul Simon wins this. But Bridge Over Troubled Water wins for both of them. Grammy Award for Album of the Year, Best Engineered Recording. The title track wins Record of the Year, Song of the Year, Best Contemporary Song, Best Arrangement, Accompanying Vocalists. All of that, 6 Grammys. And I point this out because the last story I want to tell you is similar. It's about a very famous band coming together. They're at their wits' ends with each other, and they're simultaneously making a master work, and that is Hotel California, the Eagles. You might have seen this coming, because the Eagles are famous. To let you know how acrimonious things get when they end for the Eagles, the comeback record in the mid-'90s, you remember what it's called?
Hell froze over.
Hell freezes over. And that's why it's called that, because one of them famously said, we'll get back together when hell freezes over. If you know much about the Eagles, they famously take turns doing lead vocals, right? Don Henley, Glenn Frey, Joe Walsh, even Timothy B. Schmidt, they all sing at some point. But Don Felder is their guitar player, and he doesn't sing much, and he feels a little left out. So while they're making this, they all write, too. So he brings this song called Victim of Love, and he's adamant that he wants to be the one to sing it. So the guys let him do it in the recording session, and they're all listening back to it. And these are actual quotes. Glenn Frey has said on the record, Don Felder, for all his talents as a guitar player, was not a singer. And Don Henley has said he, quote, simply did not come up to the band's standards. So things are getting so
harsh,
so tense between them that Felder leaves the studio and goes to grab dinner with their manager, and they delete his vocals, and Don Henley re-records them.
Ooh.
Oh, damn.
And this pisses him off. But so this actually doesn't break them up. So they stay together, but it just gets so bad between the rest of them. The actual thing that breaks them up doesn't happen until 1980, and then the fireworks happen, right? So this is the amputation that you all came here for. So the culminating event that breaks them up is July 31st, 1980. They are playing a benefit for California Democratic Senator Alan Cranston in Long Beach, California. And Felder's not happy because this idea to get into politics, guess whose idea it was? Don Henley and Glenn Frey. And he's been calling them, in front of them, the gods, because they make all the decisions for the band, and he's real pissed about it. So before the show, they meet the senator. We've talked about this on our shows. We did an episode on our show about how people hate the Eagles. And you hear stories like this and you understand why. So
it sounds like the Eagles hated the Eagles.
The Eagles hate the Eagles too. But so they meet the senator, and he goes around the room, oh, thank you. So he gets to Don Felder and he says, oh, thank you very much. And Don Felder looks at him and goes, you're welcome, Senator, I guess. And Glenn Frey is pissed. As soon as Cranston leaves the room, he just goes after him, right? Rips him a new one. But then they have to go on stage. And he doesn't have it out of his system. So it continues on stage. And he gets on the mic, only 3 more songs till I kick your ass, pal. And they count down on stage how long it's going to take for him to get in a fight. And as soon as it's over, that's the last show they play until 1994 when Hell Freezes Over.
Did they fight?
That's a great question. I don't know if they physically fought or not, but that breaks the band up.
Deb, snitches get stitches. Okay? No one will ever tell.
So those are some pretty dramatic, crazy breakups. I thought you would enjoy. Thank you for letting me.
Thank you for being here. That was awesome.
So I know this is a book podcast, and you guys talk about books, and this book is great. I'm really excited. I actually want to read it because I've heard what it was about. A couple of great rock and roll books. If you've read this and you want to read other ones, Daisy Jones and the Six, obviously. Have you read that?
I've read that.
I have.
Okay,
it's great.
It's really excellent, but it's also
list.
like in this, it's this same thing. It's like in the 70s. It's Fleetwood Mac-ish. There's a great book that is called The Unraveling of Cassidy Holmes, which is about a member of a girl group in the 90s and the breakup of that group. It's all fictionalized, but it's loosely based on
like a Spice
people
Girls.
you'd all remember, the Spice Girls, the Pussycat Dolls. So that's a really good time. The Unraveling of Cassidy Holmes.
Daisy Jones and the Six, I'm pretty positive was inspired by a Fleetwood Mac performance where Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks are like on the mic together, all up in each other's faces back when it was good.
Oh, yeah. We have a great episode about Fleetwood Mac.
I listened to it.
Yeah.
Well, Whitney, aren't you going to talk some about Fleetwood Mac tonight?
I am.
I'm really excited about that. But first, let's thank Brian for joining us from
This was fun, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
So I did a deep dive, kind of similar to what Brian was talking about, but I focused on just Fleetwood Mac, and I really actually focused basically on like one song because I'm obsessed with it right now. So reading this book, the whole premise of this famous rock band having an infamous breakup with all of the rumors and conspiracy theories made me think of Fleetwood Mac. So I wanted to talk about Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham and the song Silver Springs. I mentioned it before a few weeks back.
You have talked about this song before.
Yeah, I've been listening to it like every single day. It's such a good song, and it's a live performance from 1990.
Because I don't know which one it is.
I'll follow you down till the sound of my voice.
Okay, yeah,
will
thank
haunt
you. Yep, got it.
So the version I've been listening to is the live performance from 1997, which I'm going to talk about. So let me tell you about Stevie Nicks and Silver Springs. So I got a lot of this information from Rock and Roll Bedtime Stories, which Brian talked about. They have this episode. We'll link that in the show notes. Fleetwood Mac was actually already a band way before Stevie Nicks ever joined it. Right. So they had gone through several kind of iterations of a group, and people had left and been kicked out for various and sundry reasons. So Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham, in the meantime, while Fleetwood Mac was having all their drama before them, they met while they were still in high school, and they were in a band together. They both left that band at the same time, but wanted to still make music together. And at that point, they were not a couple. They were just like a musical relationship, right? A professional relationship. So they wanted to keep making music together, and they ended up just being a duo, and they called themselves Buckingham and Nicks, which doesn't really roll off the tongue.
No, it doesn't.
I actually really like it. I was about to say, I kind of like it. Buckingham and Nicks live in concert.
So they made an album as Buckingham and Nicks, and it really didn't like go anywhere, right? So in the process of them becoming a musical duo, they became romantically involved, and they started dating, and it was very hot and heavy, right? They were together all the time. They lived together. They worked together. They made music, right? It was a thing.
Yeah, sometimes you need to like not be together, and that's okay.
Well,
yeah.
Yes. So they were really struggling financially, young artists, right? And also they made this album and it didn't really do anything. So I'm sure that was an investment financially that they didn't recoup, and it was very stressful. So Lindsey Buckingham was working just whatever, kind of like a independent contractor guitarist, right? Like whoever would hire him for gigs, like he was just working as a guitarist. And Stevie Nicks was cleaning houses and working as a waitress to make ends meet, right?
Wow.
So she's working 2 jobs. He's going touring basically as a guitarist, and it's very, very stressful. They were exhausted, completely overwhelmed, and extremely broke. And the relationship was already going downhill when they joined up with Fleetwood Mac because of that kind of situation. So what happens is Lindsey Buckingham is doing a gig with somebody, and somehow Mick Fleetwood of Fleetwood Mac kind of hears him, and they get to talking, whatever. And Fleetwood Mac invites Lindsey Buckingham to join the group as their guitarist. Lindsey Buckingham, to his credit, is like, well, I'm a package deal with my girlfriend who's a vocalist. So if you want me,
everyone at Fleetwood Mac was like,
right? But luckily it was Stevie Nicks, right? Who is amazing. And so that's how they both got into the band. They invited Lindsey Buckingham, and he said, we're a package deal, which I do credit him for that, because I feel like a lot of boyfriends would have been like, fine, great. Yeah. And would not have included the girlfriend, right? So they joined Fleetwood Mac, they had huge success. So that version of Fleetwood Mac, as Brian and Murdoch talk about in their episode about it, that's the version of Fleetwood Mac that everybody knows, right?
Right.
People, I didn't, until I listened to that episode, I had no idea that there were multiple versions of that band before Stevie Nicks, right? I just did not know that.
Well, it's interesting to hear that they also had a lot of breakups previous to Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham. Yeah.
They go listen to that episode because it's so crazy. There's so much drama and multiple different relationships completely imploding. Like it's almost, you almost want to say Fleetwood Mac was like cursed, except that they were super successful.
Right.
So there's that, right? So they have this huge success. That version of Fleetwood Mac and the albums that they made, those are the infamous albums, right? If you talk about Fleetwood Mac, these are the songs that you're going to think of as Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham, Fleetwood Mac. Their album Rumors has Dreams, which Stevie Nicks wrote. It has Go Your Own Way, which Lindsey Buckingham wrote. Those are some of their like most famous songs, right? But Stevie and Lindsey had actually broken up while they were working on that album, Rumors, and it was ugly. Like, it was bad. And I really tried hard to find out why they broke up specifically, and I couldn't really find anything.
Probably because they spent too much time together.
I mean, right? It did say their relationship was already very much on the rocks because it was super stressful, and I'm sure being really busy, even though they were successful with Fleetwood Mac, it was very busy. It was overwhelming. They suddenly went from like broke as a joke to super famous overnight, right? So, I mean, not overnight, but very quickly.
And I mean, just because they got famous too doesn't mean they were necessarily getting paid yet.
Well, that's
right.
true.
So they were probably still super broke.
Everything changed very quickly.
Right.
So I think that's why they broke up. But I was looking for like
somebody to actually say it.
Yes, like a specific fight. Like, this is the straw that broke the camel's back or something. And I just didn't see it. So maybe it's out there somewhere. But Go Your Own Way was actually Lindsey Buckingham writing about their breakup and was kind of digging at Stevie Nicks. And
bye.
Well,
and then she's singing it.
Dreams was written by Stevie Nicks about her breakup with Lindsey Buckingham, and it was kind of a dig at Lindsey Buckingham. So like, they were not talking if they were not performing. When they weren't playing, they were screaming at each other in recording sessions. They were yelling at each other behind the scenes,
airing their dirty laundry to everybody.
Yes, and making the other one sing the songs that they wrote about that person. Right? Like, they're both writing these breakup songs and like being real petty and kind of bitchy to each other.
Now you can sing it, bitch.
Exactly.
I kind of love it.
I kind of do.
I do too. So that brings me to the song Silver Springs. So Stevie Nicks wrote the song Silver Springs. It was supposed to be on the album Rumors. Stevie wrote that song, as she describes it, as basically like an homage to the idea of a fairy tale love, a fairy tale ending that she wanted to have with Lindsey Buckingham, and like grieving the loss of that. So it's such a good breakup song when you listen to the words. It's also kind of a long song, like 6-ish, 7-ish minutes. Like, that's a long song. So this is the 70s when this rumor album comes out. These are going on vinyl record albums, right? So those have this space that they have. You can't just keep adding songs. They'll only hold so much. So Silver Springs was basically too long of a song for them to put on the record without cutting other songs. And nobody wanted to cut any of the other songs. So essentially Mick Fleetwood was like, we're not going to put this song on the album. And Stevie Nicks like understood that, but she was really frustrated and disappointed that the song that she really loved and that she wrote, and felt strongly about, wasn't going to be on the album. The other piece to that she was really frustrated about was that she gave the publishing rights to her mom, anticipating that this song was going to be on this album for this huge band and sell a crap ton of records, and that her mom would get a huge royalties check. And then the song ends up not being on the album at all. Yeah. So she had set this up to give her mom this like, thank you for supporting me my entire life gift. And then it ends up like kind of not happening at all because the song's not on the album. So she was really frustrated by that and was upset with the band that like she didn't want to take any of the other songs off either, but she just wanted her song on the album. Yeah. Right. So she did not get the payday for her mom that she was trying to give her. But they kind of compromised. They released Go Your Own Way, which was Lindsey's song, as a single, and they put Silver Springs as the B-side song on that single.
Okay.
So it was kind of like a bittersweet thing. Like, we are releasing it and people will hear it, but it's on the B-side of your ex-boyfriend song that he wrote about you.
Yeah, I know. I think
know
I'd
what
be
I mean?
About you, about GTFO.
Exactly.
I think I'd be
Right?
pissed.
So it's like, we're getting it out there, but also, could we have done it a different way?
Yeah.
But that's what they did. It basically made no money for Stevie Nicks' mom. The band played it live a few times in the mid to late 70s, and then they didn't play it again, basically, until 1997. So, between playing that song just a few times and then 1997, here's what happened. The band had gone through ebbs and flows and breakups at this point. Stevie had actually quit Fleetwood Mac because of the song Silver Springs. Not that time, but later in 1990. She wanted to put Silver Springs on a Best of Stevie Nicks album at the same time that Mick Fleetwood wanted to put that song in a box set of Fleetwood Mac, like a Fleetwood Mac catalog box set. And so basically he won because I guess he had seniority as like the founder of Fleetwood Mac, right? He used Silver Springs in his like Fleetwood Mac box set, and she didn't get to put it on her best of, and she quit the band over that that dispute. So that was in 1990. All kinds of drama happened. The band basically had broken up. They all did a bunch of drugs and had a bunch of affairs and like screwed each other over. Like it's a whole thing. So in 1997, the band all came back together, including Lindsey Buckingham, to do the album The Dance. And they did live performances, concerts that were filmed and aired, I want to say PBS, but whatever. They were filmed and aired, and some of those live performances were put onto The Dance. And Silver Springs was one of those songs. So in 1997, this performance of Silver Springs was, I wrote, absolutely electric because... I mean, okay, so when I'm reading this premise of Wreck the Halts, getting a band back together, this performance of this song from 1997 is the only thing that I could think of. So Stevie Nicks is singing this song where she wrote this about her ex-boyfriend, and she is telling him, I will never leave your presence. You are going to hear my voice until you die. You're going to constantly hear me because I'm writing songs about you, and you're going to hear me on the radio, and I hope it pisses you off. Like, she wrote this whole thing, like, I will follow you down till the sound of my voice will haunt you, is what the song says.
Okay, yeah.
And she turns on stage during this live performance and stares at Lindsey Buckingham, and the eye contact, you guys, it gives me goosebumps. I cannot even explain it to you. You have got to go look this up. She starts singing this part, like, I will follow you down, and my voice will haunt you, and she's staring him in the eyes the entire time, and he has to play,
son of a bitch,
he has to play the lead guitar on this song, and he's just staring right back at her, and there's so much like prolonged eye contact, and you're just like, these two were so in love with each other and are kind of soulmates in a way. I think the way that they talk about each other, but you know, he's been married to somebody else for like 25 years or something at this point, and he was with this woman that is has
that was
now
happening?
Yes, she was in the audience, right?
Yikes.
It is so crazy. So she says he will never get away from the sound of the woman who loves him. And like I said, she wrote that song with the idea that he would have to hear her singing on the radio. And she wanted it to like really annoy him and bother him.
That's
Like,
hilarious.
She's just being so petty, which it is so funny. So she turns away from the audience to sing this directly to Lindsey Buckingham, the guy that she wrote the song about, while she's telling him that he will never get away from her voice, which is, I mean, it's genius. It's like the best closure, I feel like, for like an angry ex-girlfriend that feels like she's been wronged. Like, it's just so great. So that performance actually earned her a Grammy nomination, which she did not win, which is just a travesty. But the inclusion of Silver Springs on the Dance album earned her mom, who still had the rights to it, earned her mom a $50,000 royalty check.
Oh, that's awesome.
About 25 years after she was trying to get her mom. Like,
Right.
her mom finally did get the royalty check. which I just love that. So this clip of this performance from 1997 started making the rounds on TikTok in the last couple of years, which is how I ever heard the song in the first place. So that song kind of like disappeared because they never played it. And then it was on this best of album or whatever for Fleetwood Mac in 1990, but it was still very like low key until 1997. Yeah. And with that performance and it getting nominated for a Grammy, it had a resurgence. And then sometime through COVID, it had another resurgence on TikTok, and it showed up on my For You page. And that is how I even like know about Silver Springs. But it reminded me so much of this book, right? Like it 100%. Talks about their famous song going viral on social media, and all kinds of people are using the sound and videos of the performances, and you know, they're live on social media to do this reunion thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this had to I really feel like Tessa Bailey had to have seen the Silver Springs stuff on TikTok in the last few years and was like, I'm gonna write a book about this because it is so it's just kind of the same thing. So I just loved it. This was all I could think about. I love all the drama with Fleetwood Mac. I love that ultimately everybody found their own success and like their own happiness, and I don't think anybody's like pining for anybody else, but that just as a girl who's been through some breakups and felt like she's been wronged, like seeing a woman look him and like that person in the eyes and be like, fuck you, here I am, and did you get away from me? Nope. You're on stage with me right now.
Nope, motherfucker.
Playing the guitar to the song that I wrote about you. I love it. I love that song. Look it up, Silver Springs. It's great.
We'll link it in the show notes.
Yeah, it's the video. So good. But thank you for letting me talk about it once again. I'd like to say it's the last time I'll bring up Silver Springs, but
no promises.
Yeah, no. We still have another episode of this book.
I know, right? I'll probably talk about it next time too. So let's move into our least favorite moment. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. So mine was when Beat leaves Melody hanging in the hallway because of his issues. And she thinks it's because of something she's done and that she is somehow inadequate. And that's the part I just hate about it. And I know this is the part of the miscommunication that's necessary, but it also sucks balls.
Yes.
You know whose balls didn't get sucked? His.
Oh, exactly.
Right. And they could have been if he had just waited a second.
I'm like, dude, come on.
Yeah.
So I just felt so bad for her in that moment because, you know, she was already feeling, you know, she was already struggling with feelings of inadequacy and like low self-esteem. And then for that, just for her to think that that was her fault, just broke my heart.
It reminded me a lot of scenes in From Blood and Ash and book 2 of that series, Kingdom of Flesh and Fire, where Poppy does not know what's going on in Castiel's head and thinks that he's like rejecting her, that he doesn't like her, that she's doing things wrong, and she just doesn't understand the situation. It reminded me a lot of that.
And it's again because the guy didn't communicate.
Right. Yeah.
So
just like talk to people.
Right.
I
just,
know.
Talk to each other.
But I mean, I get that's why, you know, it would be boring if they didn't. So
by the way, I like edging. And she's like, okay, cool. And then the book's over.
The end.
Well, I think my least favorite part was hashtag Melody is a beat simp.
Yeah.
I know.
I just sincerely disliked that the media uses Melody's crush against her at the beginning of this book, especially after she explains that the media treated Beat like a golden child, but continuously spoke negatively about Melody while she was a teenager.
Yeah.
And no one would ever tell a guy not to act like he was interested in a girl when they were trying to get ratings.
Right.
Ever. Right. And so it was just like, well, if the guy's interested and he's gushy, it's fine. If the girl's interested and she's gushy, she's a simp.
Right.
Well, and other people too said at different points in the book that Beat was super obvious about his feelings for her at the same time.
But there's no hashtag.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. He's supposedly just as obvious about it, but nobody says anything.
Right.
But it lines up a lot with what it was actually like as far as how the media treated women and especially younger celebrity girls in the early 2000s. Like that's just how it was, right?
Right. And I almost put as my most favorite part was the part where Beat is actually being interviewed and they're saying something negative about Melody, and he says, I'm not talking to you again until you stop talking about women like this on air. And then it talks about in the book how like it changed the way that media portrayed women, which if that could happen in real life, that would be super rad. Yeah. But I really like that, and it gave us a deeper level of Beat's character and how he felt about her.
Yeah, I liked that a lot too. My least favorite moment is actually also my biggest revelation, because when we find out that the person that is blackmailing Beat is his actual biological father, that bummed me out a lot. So I thought that the blackmailing was about the fact that he had a different dad, but I didn't expect it to be his actual dad, right? That's just a tough relationship to wade through, right? To find out, first of all, that the person you thought was your dad wasn't actually your dad, like that in and of itself is tough. But then to find out that your biological father is somebody who is willing to to manipulate you and to not try to have a relationship with you, but just like fleece you for cash. Yeah. Right. Like that is also difficult. And doing all of that by himself, not talking to anybody about it, not approaching his mom because he was afraid of what it would do to her and her relationship with his dad. His
father
dad.
And his dad.
Right?
Yeah.
Biological father and dad. Yeah, I hated that. I hated that he has a biological father that isn't interested in having a relationship with him outside of just give me money or I'm going to hurt. I'm going to hurt you.
Sad.
All right. Yeah.
That was rough.
Well, I'll bring it back up with my biggest revelation then.
Oh, good.
So this is pretty funny, but Beat keeps talking about how he has specific sexual tastes, right? And I thought for sure that it was bondage.
I did too. That was my revelation too.
So there's a point in the book that reads, quote, Melody pressed her fingers around his wrist and pressed down tight, and something unexpected flared in his light blue eyes. Was that lust? A flaming hot flare of shooting across the sky of his face, unquote. And it turns out, as we've already said, his sexual deviance is just edging. Sweet, sweet boy.
I know.
Was that your biggest revelation
That
too,
was one
Wendy?
of mine, yes.
Oh,
so funny.
you have 4?
No, I only have 2. Well, what's funny is I only have 2 and they were both of yours. So
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, so my first one was the edging secret, and I thought it definitely was going to be even more dark, like BDSM or something.
Right, because like when she wrapped her hands around his wrist, he got
was
all like,
ooh,
oh.
Yeah. But I don't know, when he's talking about how dark it is, I'm like, it's definitely BDSM, right? Like, it has to be. And then I was like, oh, okay, well.
One of the notes I wrote down while I was reading.
That de-escalated quickly.
That's why I was like, is he going to be like a nicer version of Christian Grey? Like, is this where we're headed? And I was kind of like, no. We've had a lot of that since 50 Shades of Grey came out. So I was kind of like, womp womp. Yeah. And then it was not that, which I was happy about. But then I was
but
like,
at the same time, you were like a little disappointed.
He could have at least liked a spanking or something. Like,
I feel like that's normal, Beat.
Oh, you like to wait a second for your orgasm? Whoa!
Hang on there. Slow down there,
your
roll, buddy.
I don't think I can handle that.
It's getting a little too intense in here for me.
Well, let's talk about what spicy scenes we did like.
I did like the hallway scene up until Beat ruins it and hurts Melody's feelings. So overall, Beat is just a really great guy, but he has a little bit of growing up to do.
Yeah.
And I mean, anywho, I think that it makes it so hot for me that Beat gets her so wound up in anticipation that he barely has to touch her to make her unravel. You say he doesn't touch her, and I will say it doesn't say that he does, but I feel like you're supposed to assume that he does.
I don't know. Maybe I just was like taking it too literally or something. Right. But I was like, damn, she just spontaneously orgasmed?
No,
Tell me how that happens.
He talks about how he like moves her underwear and sees her.
That's true.
And so I just assume that he does touch her.
That makes sense.
So, but I will say, I just want to say a note to our guy listeners, because we do have guy listeners. Just take your time and build it up, baby. Yeah. I promise it'll pay off for you. But you could make
a woman
spontaneously. Well,
orgasm.
I mean, the build up. If you want your woman to have an orgasm, build it up.
Yeah.
Don't just like go in there and just stick it in her. Like that's not. You just heard it earlier. 13 minutes of penetration to get us there.
Yep.
Come on. Or you could wind us up and it'll happen in 2 or 3.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. So
agreed.
Yeah.
Foreplay is where it's at.
Right. What'd you like about it?
So mine was also the hallway scene. Just the tension and I mean, I know it's weird because that was also my least favorite scene, but like you said, leading up to it, the tension, the whole will they, won't they vibe, like I kind of love that. And then when he finally kisses her and just gave me butterflies. I love it when I get butterflies when I'm reading something. Like, to me, that's just like that penultimate moment in a movie that's just like that you're watching when they finally just kiss and they just smushes their mouth.
There's like butterflies.
Yes, I just love it.
I was thinking like literally just butterflies flying.
Oh, yeah. And then the doves fly.
Yeah, fireworks.
And the fountain in the background.
Right, yeah.
Well, the hallway scene was also my favorite spicy scene, but it was made I mean, it would have been my favorite spicy scene anyway, but it definitely was because of what happened while I was reading it. And so I mentioned before I was listening to the audiobook while we were driving home from Charleston. And so as I was listening to the hallway scene and he's telling her, I think at one point he tells her that she's a good girl in that scene, which is like,
he does.
I enjoy that. And as I swear, as soon as she was starting to orgasm in the audiobook, Deb, who was driving, started cleaning the windshield, and the cleaner.
I forgot about that. And it squirted all over the place.
Oh, that's awesome.
And you busted up laughing. I forgot about that.
I mean, it was such perfect timing. I'm like just staring out the front windshield while I'm listening.
Did I get the graphic audio?
Exactly. It was like a motion ride at Disney World or something. Like
it's a 4D experience.
It was so funny and just like perfect timing, which I really enjoyed a lot. So, who did you guys put for your chapter MVP? I wonder if we all said the same person.
I don't think so because mine's Danielle.
Oh, that's a surprise.
Yeah. She, if the readers don't or the listeners don't know, she's the producer of the reality show, and I liked her for 3 reasons. So, number one, the reader never hates her as the producer of the show, and she continuously respects Melody and Beat's boundaries, and we all know that would not happen in real life.
Right.
If there was a live stream, right? The second reason why is she does not let the cameras come into the room when Mel's getting dressed, which I also really appreciated. And then finally, she really gives Melody the liberties to be herself. She does not try to train her to be different on TV or to be like a sex symbol or anything like that. And so I really like Danielle.
Yeah, she doesn't really ask her to be anything but herself.
Right. Yeah.
I hadn't really thought about that until just now. But yeah, she's like the perfect version of what a reality producer should be.
Right.
But most
but
of
never
them,
is.
Yeah.
Right.
They're not.
In Danielle's, favor, she did have 2 people that just made it happen, right? She didn't have to do anything for ratings, but she could have tried to sex her up. She could have been feeding her lines to give to Beat. She could, you know what I mean? And she didn't do any of that. I really liked it.
The situation.
Yeah, she wasn't the villain of the story.
Right.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Beat's edging was.
I said Melody.
I did too.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
So I said Melody because she's very funny. I thought she was funny and charming the whole time, right? She doesn't think that she is the whole time, but I just loved her from page 1. And she was so authentic. And, as we talked about earlier, one of you guys said her confidence started to build and she was just who she was, right? She didn't put on any airs or pretend to be different in front of the camera. Like she just was who she was and everybody loved her for it, right? And she was also very brave, I felt like, to put herself in those different vulnerable positions, not just doing the show. That in and of itself was huge, but also putting herself in different positions with Beat, who she is like
Literally
sexual positions?
Yes, but just the vulnerable conversations and like going onto this topic of their moms and this band that they like do not talk about, and both of them want to be so private and she wants to be out of the spotlight and she's willing to really be brave and put herself out there for him, right? If it wasn't him asking her to do it, she wouldn't have done it.
Right. Yeah.
My reasoning is similar, but just a little bit different. Mostly with her, first of all, I love a quirky girl character. Like, they're definitely my favorite. And if you've read any of Helena Hunting's, like, all her female characters are quirky, and that's probably why I love her so much. But Melody reminded me a lot of those characters that are just like little quirk. They've got their quirks, and I think it's because it kind of reminds me of me sometimes.
Yeah.
But mostly it's because she's taking risk for what she wants and being honest to Beat. Like, even though he's holding back, she knows who she is and she doesn't apologize for it anymore. And I really, really, really enjoyed the moment when she just went for it and told Beat that she had a crush on him instead of trying to play it off. Like, she was like, well, what the fuck? I'll just say it.
Yeah.
And I loved that moment where she just was like, you know what? This is me. So love me or leave me, kind of.
Yeah. It felt very middle school, but also very mature.
Yes.
To just, let's just talk
thing.
about it and get it out in the open.
See, that's the thing. I would never have admitted I had a crush on a guy that I wasn't 100% positive.
Even now, I'd be like, nuh-uh. Do not. He's ugly.
I would have had to ask 10 of my
did.
friends to make sure that he liked me before I said, oh, I like you too. So she was just like, all right, I'm just going to go for it.
Oh, I just totally went for it.
Think about my personality, though, compared to yours. Like, I need to win. So if he doesn't like me, too, I don't win.
Yeah.
So, I can't put it all out there because then I don't win.
When Robbie and I started dating, I pretended to know about basketball and watched a basketball game in his dorm room.
Like, where's the field goal?
Yeah, right. And he was like, I'm going to go get a Gatorade. Do you want to go get a Gatorade with me? And I was like, sure. And we were standing in front of the Gatorade vending machine, and he was asking me, like, what flavor should he get? And I said, did you actually bring me down here for Gatorade? Because I thought we were going to kiss.
You're like, Gatorade, wink, wink.
Right? I was like, wait, did I misread these signs? And
Did
then
he
he was
kiss
like,
you?
oh. Yeah, and then he kissed me.
Yeah.
Oh.
How sweet over Gatorade. He's like, let's leave my dorm and get some Gatorade.
Yeah,
Are you thirsty, Whitney?
in the lobby? In the lobby of the like gross, stinky, athletic boys' dorm at college.
Are you thirsty for these hydrating fluids? Electrolytes.
Sodium. Yeah. So, what about your favorite secondary character?
Well, I feel like I've been really different from you guys this time. So mine was Octavia.
That is not who I said.
That's not who I said either.
So the chick literally enters the ballroom of the gala while being carried on an actual throne.
Yeah.
She's
With guys dressed like swans.
Right, yeah. She's rock star royalty and plays the part very well, even though she's grown up and matured and really essentially lives in like this crystal palace that she's created for herself. She loves the spotlight and doesn't apologize for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I
I mean,
did love that moment.
I mean, you don't really like her, but in that moment, I'm like, well, yeah, if you had like, of course they just carried you in. You're tired.
You
have
don't
shit
like
to
her,
do.
but you appreciate her.
Right.
I
Yeah.
did really like how Beat loves her and is like, well, yeah, of course she had a bunch of guys carry her in on it, but he's not like annoyed by it or grossed out by it.
He
or,
indulges her.
Yes,
Yeah.
but like he's willing to indulge
Yeah.
her. They have a good relationship, and so because we like Beat so much, it makes you think Octavia's not super horrible.
Right.
Like she's not a great
Right.
person, but you're like, well, she can't be all that bad, right?
Right.
Because he
Right.
loves her. I liked that writing decision to have him have a good relationship with his mom.
Well,
that way.
yours was not Octavia, so whose was it?
No, it was the cameraman.
Mine too.
Was it Joshua?
Joseph.
Joseph. Joshua. Joseph, who is like obviously in love with Danielle, the producer, right? He barely says anything, but I loved his presence. And he was funny without like the way that he was written. He's just funny without doing anything.
Yeah.
And I really liked him.
That's how I was too.
That was one of my questions too. Is do Danielle and Joseph end up together?
I wondered if they have a book, like if they have already been in a book together somehow in the Tessa Bailey universe, or if they're going to have a book spinoff or something like
There's
that.
definitely something
There's
there.
something
Yeah.
there, and I was like, is this like an Easter egg if you read all of her books? Because this is the first one of Tessa Bailey's books that I've read. So
I mean, I have read the Unfortunately Yours series and the It Happened One Summer series, and I know they have like different names in that. And it doesn't sound super familiar, but that doesn't mean she has tons of books.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
and she used to do much more like contemporary romance
And
instead
maybe
of
it's
rom-com.
setting it up for another book
Yeah,
too. I mean,
maybe.
that
Yeah.
happens a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I loved Joseph too. I just love how he's always on the fringe, so you know he knows more than he lets on.
Yeah.
And plus, he just seems so smug in a charming way, and he gets under Danielle's skin, which for some reason makes me laugh. I just like their chemistry.
yeah.
And like you said, he doesn't say a whole lot, but his presence is just funny.
yeah. His presence is there,
Yes.
right? He's a background character, but he's not like an invisible background
Right,
character.
right.
He's got a lot of presence and somehow conveys a lot of information
I
without
imagine-
actually saying anything.
Yeah,
you
I
know?
imagine that's hard to write too.
I was just thinking that same
Because
thing.
if you want to put a funny character in there, you're going to write like banter and all that stuff. Like
Yeah.
that's where I would go at least. So it is kind of interesting and fun that he's this enigma character that's
Yeah.
there but not really. But yes, he's there. I don't know.
Yeah,
He was fun.
I want a Danielle Joseph book.
You heard it here, Tessa Bailey.
Please. What about your favorite quote?
What was yours, Whit?
Well, I had like 3.
I only had 2.
Well, I had one more than that. I really liked at the beginning when Melody was just like describing herself. She says that she's less Holly go lightly and more Holly go home and
I
stay
love
there.
that one too.
That was my favorite quote as well.
Was it? Oh, I love
Yeah,
that.
and I put it's because it sums up my personality in a nutshell. Well, and you guys know me. I always am up for anything, and I make a million plans, but when it comes down to it, I'm generally pissed about leaving the house, right? Like Melody just wants a couple of friends. She wants to restore books for a living and maybe fall in love.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. That's all. That's my life right there. That's what I want to do.
I want to be on the couch with my blanket and read a book and everybody leave me alone.
Right.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
What were your other two?
Yeah, that one was my first one. The second one is when Melody goes to the gym for the cup of coffee with like the weirdest gym invitation ever. And she's totally checking him out because he's in the middle of working out, right? He's shirtless and sweaty and hot. And she says, "Oh my God, she was looking at his nipples." Stop. And that just made me laugh a lot. That felt like something I would be like, "Oh my gosh, I was looking at his nipples. Stop it. Stop it." Like that felt like something I would say to myself. And it just made me laugh. And then my number one favorite quote is from Octavia, actually, when she says to Melody, "The next time a spotlight lands on you, sucker punch it back."
I love that.
Because
too.
she got knocked down by the power of the
light.
the spotlight.
Yeah.
And I just really liked that advice of like, don't let it overwhelm you. Like you have your own presence and stand your ground, right? I really like that.
That was a great quote too.
I like that a lot. What about you, Mindy?
So my funny one is from the gym also, and it's when she's checking out his happy trail and where it leads, and he says, "Are you okay down there?" And she answers, "Not as okay as you are down there." That just made me laugh so hard. But the more kind of I guess it's a serious one, but that got me thinking was when she's talking about her job of restoring books. And Melody says, "I lived inside those books growing up. I want to take care of them like they took care of me." I just feel this in my very soul. Like just mentioned from the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Baisley Frankweiler, and I'm totally transported back to my elementary school days, right? Yeah. Books were my best friends when I was younger, and when I was feeling alone, they kept me company, right? And I think that to some extent that drives my passion for working with kids in the library, right? So I wanted to look a little bit at nostalgia and what benefits it has, but I also found some negative aspects of it too. So even though it was a positive driving force for me, did you know that nostalgia was considered by experts to be a mental health condition?
Oh.
Yeah. So
Is hysteria in women?
I was going to say, is that what's wrong with me?
So the term was first used by a physician named Johannes Hofer in the late 1600s to describe symptoms of anxiety, homesickness, disordered eating, and insomnia in Swiss mercenaries who were fighting in battles away from home. So kind of honing in on the homesickness. So by the 1800s, it was considered a severe depression stemming from homesickness and loss. And it wasn't until the 1900s that a sociologist named Fred Davis started to make a clear distinction between nostalgia and homesickness. And then others picked up where he left off and started highlighting both the consequences and the benefits of nostalgia. So one thing is most memories are just fragments. So after time, they start to make sort of an incomplete picture of an actual event. Like the closer you are to the event, the more you'll remember about it, and the further away you get, you just start thinking about bits and pieces of it. So the memory has it's almost like it has an Instagram filter on it, making it seem softer and more appealing than it actually is. And the problem here becomes getting caught up in that idealized past and comparing it to your present when things aren't going well. So like if you're reminiscing about the quote good old days, that indicates that the days that you're in are bad or not good, right? So some of the negative effects that have been there's some actual studies been done on this. A 2012 study exploring the negative effects of nostalgia asked 200 adults questions about their mood and their tendency to worry, and then asked them to recount a nostalgic memory using visual imagery. And the results of that showed that if participants had a high tendency to worry, they reported stronger feelings of depression and anxiety after talking about their past. So if you're very worrisome, going back and thinking nostalgically about things might make you feel more depression and anxiety. So I thought that was a really weird kind of take on it.
Yeah, because I always think of nostalgia as a positive.
Yeah, I do too.
I'm
Me
really
too.
nostalgic towards that. And
it
made me feel good.
It does have some positive aspects that I will go over after we talk about some of these negative ones. But it also can create a cycle of distress. So you might think of something in the past nostalgically, especially after some sort of negative event that you're having currently, which could make you focus more on the past, triggering sadness and depression. So the distress of this could then prompt further nostalgia, starting the whole process again. So it could be like a vicious cycle. If you tend to get nostalgic when you're already feeling down, your memories might actually darken your mood. Some people have anticipatory nostalgia, which can trigger anxiety and distress. Like basically this is a longing and a loneliness felt for someone you haven't even lost yet. So while you're enjoying time with a family member or your partner, you'll start thinking that it won't always be this way or every day can't be like this. And you might start missing someone before they're even gone.
I do that.
I know I do too. But there are some positive effects of nostalgia. A stronger, more positive sense of identity is what it gives you. So you looking back at the past can help you realize how much you've grown. So like if you look back and you think, well, I used to do this, but then you look at yourself now and think, well, I'm better off now. I don't know. Some people do that.
I don't think I've grown.
You may have grown more than you think you have. Then thinking of your accomplishments and important life events can also remind you that life has value and meaning, even if it didn't turn out exactly as you planned. So those moments where you're like, oh, if I had a, like I always think about with my husband, I was going to move to Colorado. Like after college, I was going to move to Colorado. I wanted to live there. There was no doubts about it. And then I met my husband and I stayed here. And now, the rest is history. So I always think about that kind of, turn in my life that wasn't what I really expected, but turned out much better than I would have planned anyways. And then
I thought you were going to say, I always think about what would it have been like if
I hadn't met my husband.
I should have gone to Colorado.
What's funny though, when I start thinking about that, it becomes like a cycle. I'm like, well, then I wouldn't have met you guys because I wouldn't have been with my husband at that, where we met. So that could be a negative consequence as well. So while nostalgia can foster a sense of loneliness, it also can help you feel more connected to others, which sounds paradoxical, but memories of people you care about remind you about what you value in your current relationships. So like if I'm remembering my dad and like stuff that we did and the way that he took care of me, it might make me value how Darren takes care of our children or takes care of me or whatever. And then finally, instead of focusing on the good old days as a reminder of what isn't good in your life now, you can see it as a motivation to rediscover that happiness. It can inspire you to work towards improving your situation. So if you're looking back on, quote, the good old days and things aren't going great, if you flip the switch on that, flip the script on that, then you can say, well, I know it can be good. So what do I need to do now to get back to that?
Yeah.
So those are some positives, and it's really just all about perspective. And I think this is true of many things. Like life only moves in one direction, right? Forward. And if you stay rooted in the past, you can't grow and move forward. But if you look at your past more as like a compass instead of a roadblock, it will totally guide you forward. So it's definitely a mindset and how you view it.
That was really deep, Mindy.
I know. It was a very interesting deep dive for me.
Use the past as a compass.
Yes.
You heard it here, folks.
I know. That needs to go on a journal or something. No, that was good. Yeah, I've only ever thought about nostalgia as a positive thing too.
Yeah.
So, okay, what questions do you guys have going into the second half of the book?
I only have one because we've talked about a couple so far. Are we supposed to assume that Beat was edging himself that night that Melody's in the hallway and she can hear the bed creaking?
Yes.
Oh, I assumed so. Yeah.
Like, boy couldn't wait till she fell asleep. Like,
I think maybe he thought she was asleep.
She had been in there for like 5 minutes.
Maybe he thought he was being discreet.
She sat on the edge of the bed and got deep in thought and then got up and went in the hallway and it's like...
You know what, though? Being deep in thought, it feels like 5 minutes, but it could have been like 45. Like if she's just sitting there thinking about all this stuff.
Not everyone thinks as deeply as you do.
Time flies when you're having fun. I wonder, too, because I thought maybe we would get that piece of what was going on in his POV, and then we didn't. But I wonder.
Then I was jerking off. I will say, for the record, Tessa Bailey in 2 of her books does have some joint masturbation scenes.
Oh my!
And they are really good.
Well,
she's really good.
She writes some hot stuff.
I wondered though if it was part of his like punishment to himself of like, I'm gonna do this and not allow myself to like make any noise, even though he was like, I wonder if that would make sense to me.
Not gonna make any noise. She could hear him breathing through the door.
Well, I know, but I don't know.
Like, I'm
anyway
turned on and scared right now. It sounds a little bit like a masturbation scene in Friday the 13th.
Psycho. Yeah, exactly. Mindy, did you have any questions?
I had a couple. I still need more details on this drummer dad cheating scandal.
Me too.
I want to know what went on there. And I think when we found out that he was blackmailing him because he was his dad, but then we also found that there was a cheating scandal. I texted both of you and I said, if they end up being brother and sister, I'm going to cut a bitch. Yeah. Like, I was like, no.
That same. And then at one point, I can't remember where in the book, but there is a point where Melody specifically talks about her dad. Yeah. And I remembered that. And I was like, okay,
thank God.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm not going to lie. I had that initial thought too, because I read this before you guys did.
Yeah.
And I did think to myself, nope, Tessa Bailey does a happy ending. And
right.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's no
like
way that's going to happen.
I'm like, there are some other authors where I would have been like, sure, that's going to happen, but
right.
not TB.
Yeah, I was glad that wasn't the case.
And the only other question I had is, what the fuck does gingerbread and wind smell like? Because that's what he says she smells like. I'm like, I don't... Gingerbread I get,
wind.
But wind?
Okay, so there is... I'll find it in my Kindle
Farts?
highlights.
Like, I don't know.
No. So...
smell like farts.
In my Kindle highlights of A Serpent in the Wings of Night, she talks about how he smells like the wind as it's like blowing in your, like, it's very descriptive, and it's like a smell that I really love. So I'll look it up and send it to you, because for me it made sense, and I was like, it's like the wind on like a summer day when it's
but
like
bro's gonna throw some gingerbread in there too,
right?
What
Yeah.
the hell?
Well, she talks about how she uses seasonal scents, and it's Christmas.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, but the wind,
I don't know,
is going a little far.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah,
she smelled like the heather in the summer.
Yeah. I had a question about the dad, the biological dad too, because my thought was, especially when Beat is saying he hasn't told anybody about this, he hasn't asked his mom, he hasn't talked to anybody for quite a while. I was like, is he even his actual biological dad?
I wondered
is this
that
all
too.
Just a manipulation?
Like, did he ask for proof? Like, what?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's one of my big questions going into the second half of the book. But then the other one, you guys, at the end of chapter 15 or 16, whatever it was, when they're like basically doing it on the private plane, I'm like, how big is that private plane? Because private planes are not spacious.
They are not.
To sit on someone's lap and have two other people plus the pilot.
Well, and it's like someone from up front goes, "We're about to land," and it sounds like you're on a commercial airline.
Right.
My favorite was when he pulled his jacket over top of him. I'm like, what?
What are you hiding?
What is that hiding?
What are you accomplishing by putting your jacket over? Like, she's on your lap.
Yeah, right. Like, you're not covering your
here?
ass with that.
Oh my gosh. I
just don't move.
I mean, I was into it, and it's fine.
I for sure was
Go
into
for it. But like, let's not pretend like they're in a humongous 747. You know what I mean?
Right.
Maybe they were. Maybe they're just that wealthy. I don't know.
I highly doubt any network television flew them in something with more than 4 seats.
True.
Can you imagine if like Danielle and what's his name?
Joseph.
I keep wanting to call him Joshua.
one seat in front of him. And again, it's like...
And Danielle's like, damn, quit hitting my seat.
Right? Like, he's just pretending to be asleep so he doesn't have to
then,
deal.
like, it's not her. She's just like, we're landing in 20 minutes. God. Get off. Not literally.
And get a grip on yourselves, but not literally. Right, exactly. Oh, man, that killed me. Well, what about things you guys are looking forward to in the second half of the book?
How about you, Deb?
I think you all have touched on this, but I'd like to see Beat get revenge on his dad. I want to see him go down in flames. Obviously, I'm hoping there's some justice there. And then, Tessa Bailey, I've already said this, she's the queen of a HEA, so I assume the Steelbirds will reunite by the end of this book, and I'm excited to see how that's going to come together. Yeah. Because, they are very much like, fuck no. And even Beat and Melody are like, there's no way.
Gonna happen.
There's no way. We're going to have fun. We're going to have fun trying to do this, but it's not going to happen. Yeah. So I'm excited to see that come together.
That's a lot more mature than mine.
What was yours then? You want to see him fuck?
I didn't, not even that. I just said Beat climaxing with Melody instead of sending her away.
Okay, what's funny is one thing I'm looking forward to is Beat getting edged by Melody. I want to see her.
Has twice, Christ.
And then climax.
But like not on. Well, I guess so. Yeah, in the
in the tiny plane.
The tiny plane.
The
Yeah,
tiny
I didn't even think
plane.
about that.
Where
like,
no one knows what they're doing.
but I want it to be like full on. Yeah, and definitely I want to see him actually climax. Too.
Yeah, and like stop punishing himself
Yeah.
for something he doesn't need to punish himself for, right?
I'll punish him.
All right.
I did have one other question though.
Oh, yeah.
I'm really looking forward to meeting Melody's. Not question. I'm looking forward to meeting Melody's mom.
Yeah.
I don't know what to expect, and
I wanna
all the
I want to see the real life quote, real life version compared to what everyone is saying
yes,
about her.
Yes.
Yeah. I look forward to that as well. Was there anything else you guys wanted to talk about before we move into our nerdiest thing of the week?
No, I know what your nerdiest thing of the week is, and I'm really excited for you to talk about
Yeah.
it.
So should I go first?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, listeners, we were at Lust in the Low Country last weekend, and we had a super fun trip. It was great. It was awesome. We really, really loved it. And a lot of people made friendship bracelets, a la the Taylor Swift kind of make a friendship bracelet, take the moment and taste it. You've got no reason to be afraid. So I got 2 friendship bracelets, which I felt bad because I didn't have any to like give back to them. But they randomly gave me these 2 that fit me like perfectly. Because one of them said HEA or bust, which is totally me.
Yes.
And then the other one said good girl, which I was like, yes, that's me. So
You are a good girl.
thanks. So they have been like on my dresser, and my 4-year-old daughter found them and was like, oh, pretty bracelets. And great. She took them to her older brother and asked him what it said. And he was like, oh, that says good girl. You are a good girl. Because he's just so sweet and he loves her so much. And she was like, I am a good girl. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I just have to like not.
I just
not
lost my
react.
lady boner.
Exactly. And now I'm like, don't ruin that for
You're
me.
never going to be able to see that the same again.
But I mean, man, that was a bummer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For real bummer.
That is a bummer.
But I still like the trope.
Right. Mine also has to do with kids, but my daughter turns 16 next week, so it's a little bit different. So I took my daughter to her first haunted house last night, and it was so much fun. I would highly recommend the Haunted Hotel in Kentucky. It's ranked like one of the best like high touch haunted houses. So if you don't like to be touched, then it's not for you.
That's a big nope for
I
me.
will say
No, thank you.
they've always kind of tickled the back of your neck and stuff, but they have new owners and they pushed you into rooms and stuff. I mean, it was really fun. But at first I was wearing this cardigan and she was like literally like pulling me back to her, and I had to like essentially like put my cardigan on and be like, don't touch me. But we had so much fun, and this guy was in this super scary mask in line, and he was just messing with her the whole time. And it was really great and really magical and like cool to see my kid get to that level, right, where we get to do like fun adult stuff together. So
you love haunted houses.
Yeah.
Too.
I love
And
haunted houses.
We don't.
And now
she needed
does.
a haunted house buddy.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we went with her godmother and our friend Carrie, who's in our book club, and my husband, and it was really great. We had a good time.
I'm glad you had fun. I'm glad she liked it.
They're really
Yeah.
fucking expensive though when you're paying for a third person,
I
right?
bet.
Because it used to just be
Yeah.
me and my husband. They are not cheap anymore.
Yeah.
Yikes.
This is no YMCA haunted house.
I'm glad it was good though. Worth
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. Like Whitney said, we did Lust in the Low Country, and it really was a fantastic time. Just super fun getting to meet authors. And of course, I've been talking about it for weeks now that I'm going to meet Emily Rath, and I'd made these cross stitches for her. And so I got to give her these cross stitches, and she like put them up on her table for the weekend and was like so excited about them. And she posted them on Instagram, and I was just like, my little reader heart was so aflutter.
She really loved them.
She
It was
loved
sweet.
it. Yeah.
And I just really enjoyed meeting her. She's just such a great person and so smart and just intelligent and such a great writer. I'd fall into her books all the time. And I don't know, it's just a really special moment for me.
Yeah. I'm glad that she loved it so much.
I am
I knew
too.
that she would, but I'm glad.
You know,
that
me
she
and my
was-
anxiety, I'm like, what if she's like, oh, thanks.
No.
Cool.
She's really good at talking
She
with her
is.
readers, because
She is.
sometimes you go to a book signing and authors kind of don't know what to say, and
Yeah.
you're just like, okay, I like you, bye. But she's really good at engaging
She
and
is.
letting you know that she appreciates you
She's
as an
fantastic.
author.
If you ever have a chance to go to a signing and meet Emily Rath, do it.
Next week, we will be finishing our discussion of Tessa Bailey's Erect the Halls. We'll be talking about the rest of the book, chapters 17 through 33.
Bye! Like what you heard in this episode? Follow Our Nerdiest Thing on Instagram at instagram.com/Our Nerdiest Thing or Facebook at facebook.com/Our Nerdiest Thing. We love hearing from fellow nerds. Email us at ournerdiestthing@gmail.com.